So picture this. It's June 4th, 2026. You step outside and you can practically feel the electricity in the air right now.
Oh, yeah, totally. I mean, it's everywhere.
Right. The FIFA World Cup is kicking off this month right here on American soil. We are talking of 48 different nations competing.
And hundreds of thousands of fans just pouring into our cities.
Literally billions of people watching from living rooms and bars around the globe. It is the biggest sporting spectacle on the planet, and the United States is basically throwing the party.
We are. But, there's a flip side to this. Because behind the glittering new stadiums and all the massive corporate sponsorships...
And the face paint.
Yeah, behind all of that, there is this massive, officially documented crisis in American youth soccer.
It's a huge contrast. The host nation is celebrating the beautiful game on this incredible global stage, while at the exact same time presiding over a domestic grassroots system that is fundamentally fractured.
Fractured is, probably putting it mildly.
Yeah, exactly. So today we have this stack of sources that lay out the cold, hard reality of what's actually happening to kids across the country.
And we're not just looking at opinion pieces here.
No, not at all. We are looking at official congressional testimony from the U.S. House Committee on Education and the Workforce, plus deep dive reports from the Aspen Institute's Sports and Society program.
Which are incredibly detailed, by the way.
They really are. And we also have some incredibly sobering economic mobility data from the McKinsey Institute.
That data is, frankly, tough to read.
It is. So our goal for this deep dive is pretty clear. We are going to unpack how the United States government officially acknowledged a systemic breakdown in youth sports exactly 6 months ago.
Right.
We're going to look at why nothing has changed since that day and what this actually means for the millions of kids who are currently being sidelined in their own communities.
Which is so important for people to understand right now.
Absolutely. Okay, let's unpack this. And to do that, I want to take you away from the roaring crowds of the World Cup and drop you into a totally different scene.
A much quieter one.
Very quiet. It's December 16th, 2025. We are inside a sterile, brightly lit congressional hearing room in Washington, D.C.
Right, so imagine a room filled with heavy wooden desks, those little microphones, and thick binders of policy briefs everywhere.
It couldn't be further from the joy and chaos of a soccer pitch.
Not at all. But this room is where the reality of American soccer was basically laid bare. The hearing was titled, Benched: The Crisis in American Youth Sports and Its Cost to Our Future.
And this is where Tom Farrey comes in, right? He's the executive director of the Aspen Institute's Sports and Society program.
Exactly. And when he brought the Aspen Institute's data to the floor, he really didn't mince words. He put the entire broken system right there on the record.
What's fascinating here is that the government can no longer claim ignorance. Like, that's the real watershed moment of this December 2025 hearing.
Right, they can't just look the other way anymore.
No, because this isn't just an op-ed in a sports magazine or, angry parents complaining on a message board. The crisis is now a matter of public congressional record.
Farrey presented the lawmakers with undeniable data showing that our youth sports infrastructure is just failing kids on a massive scale.
And the timeline is what makes this so incredibly striking to me.
Oh, the timing is wild.
It is. The United States government officially named and acknowledged this crisis exactly 6 months before the world's biggest tournament arrived on its shores.
6 months.
Yeah, it's like hosting a massive, highly expensive house party to show off your mansion to the world, but you have a signed inspection report sitting on the counter proving the foundation is entirely rotted out.
That is a perfect way to describe it. And building off that rotted foundation analogy, we need to look at what that structural damage actually looks like in practice.
Right, where are the cracks?
Well, the first foundational crack is purely financial. Looking at the mechanics of this, it feels like we are operating on an entirely different economic model than the rest of the world.
Oh, totally. In Europe or South America, a youth soccer academy basically operates like a corporate research and development department.
Right.
The professional club funds the R&D. They pour resources into developing local kids because, well, if even one of those kids becomes a superstar, the club profits massively.
But reading through the Aspen reports, the American system treats parents like angel investors in a venture capital model.
Angel investors.
Yeah. The parents are forced to take on all the financial risk up front, funding the entire operation out of pocket.
Here's where it gets really interesting. Because when you think about soccer globally, it's known as the beautiful game. precisely because all you need is a ball and a patch of grass, right?
That's the romance of it, yeah.
Right. So how did it become this luxury commodity in America? Because that venture capital analogy gets right to the heart of the first major barrier, which is the economy of access.
Because the system isn't subsidized by professional clubs, the architecture of the sport relies entirely on consumer funding. The parents. And if we look at the data from the State of Play reports, the numbers are just staggering. To participate in elite youth soccer in the United States, it costs a family between $4,000 and $15,000.
Wait, between 4 and 15,000?
Yes.
Per child, every single year.
Every single year. That price tag encompasses academy registration fees, mandatory tournament travel.
Which means flights, gas, hotels.
Exactly. Plus private coaching sessions and top-tier equipment. It all adds up incredibly fast.
But wait, I'm looking at U.S. Soccer's defense of these fees and some of the supplementary material here, and I feel like I have to push back a little on this.
Yeah, what do they say?
Well, they argue that these fees are absolutely essential to maintain world-class facilities, hire elite coaching staffs, and fund the travel required to play top competition.
Right, the overhead argument.
Yeah, they basically claim that without this money, the U.S. would fall irreparably behind the European academies. Is there truth to that, or is that just a smokescreen for price gouging?
Well, it's a structural reality of how American sports are currently designed. But it's definitely not the only way to build elite talent.
Okay, so how do other countries do it without charging families 10 grand a year?
The reason European clubs can offer world-class facilities is due to the global mechanisms of solidarity payments and training compensation, coupled with the promotion and relegation system.
Okay, break that down for us, because that sounds like a lot of economics jargon. How do solidarity payments actually change the financial burden on a 10-year-old's family?
Okay, so in the global soccer market, if a professional club trains a player from the time they are, say, 8 years old, and that player eventually signs a massive professional contract.
Or gets transferred to a huge team like Real Madrid.
Exactly. The original youth club gets a financial cut of that transfer fee. They are financially rewarded by the global market for developing that talent.
Oh, wow. So they get a piece of the pie later on.
Right. That potential payout creates a massive financial incentive to scour the poorest neighborhoods and train the best athletes for absolutely free.
Because the club takes the risk, knowing the payoff could be astronomical.
Precisely. But the U.S. system doesn't operate like that. We operate on a closed franchise model.
Right, like the NFL or the NBA.
Exactly. And for a long time, the U.S. didn't systematically enforce those solidarity payments in the same way. And without the threat of promotion and relegation, professional clubs have historically had much less financial incentive to invest millions into free youth development.
So how do local youth clubs survive and pay for those world-class facilities then?
They look at the parents. They charge $10,000 a year. And when you construct a price architecture like that, you are effectively restricting the sport to upper-middle-class families.
You are systematically excluding incredible athletic talent from low-income communities.
Entirely.
And it's based entirely on financial barriers, not on a child's athletic potential, their work ethic, or their passion for the game.
If a family doesn't have thousands of dollars in disposable income, their kid is basically invisible to the elite development pipeline before they even lace up their cleats.
So the foundation is cracked right at the entry point.
Exactly. But the ripple effects of this pay-to-play model don't stop at the elite academies, because the system relies on extracting massive fees from families at the top, the grassroots level.
You mean the local recreational leagues where the vast majority of kids actually play?
Right. That grassroots level is completely starved of institutional funding and professional resources.
Which forces those local leagues to rely on a different kind of currency. Because if you can't pay professional coaches, you have to find unpaid labor.
And that drops us right into the second major structural flaw outlined in the Congressional hearing, the coaching gap.
We are talking about volunteer parents, right?
Yeah. According to the testimony and the Aston Institute data, the vast majority of these grassroots teams are coached by moms and dads who are just stepping up after working full-time jobs.
That's just noble, but...
But there are generally no formal training requirements, no mandatory certifications in child development or sports psychology, and zero real accountability mechanisms.
I read that and immediately thought about the built-in conflict of interest. It just seems obvious that a parent coach is naturally going to favor their own kid.
Right. They give their child the starting position.
The most minutes on the field while the other kids just sit on the bench.
If we connect this to the bigger picture, It goes so much deeper than just a parent being selfish, though. It's what sociologists looking at youth sports call backyard dynamics.
Backyard dynamics. That's an interesting term.
Think about the mechanics of how a volunteer actually coaches when they have zero institutional curriculum to rely on. A dad who works in accounting volunteers to coach his 10-year-old's team.
Okay.
He doesn't have a U.S. soccer coaching license. He doesn't have a developmental plan. All he knows is how he plays with his own kid in their backyard.
Oh, I see.
He knows his kid's speed, his kid's tendencies, and he builds his entire makeshift game plan around that familiarity.
So it's not necessarily a malicious choice to sideline the other kids. It's really just a limitation of the coach's own unregulated toolkit.
Precisely. The coach naturally gravitates toward the players who fit the very narrow style of play he understands.
And who are those kids? Usually they are the ones whose parents have the time and resources to practice with them at home.
Or the kids who take expensive private lessons on the side.
Right. Meanwhile, the child whose parents are working the night shift, who only gets to touch a soccer ball during these chaotic team practices, they don't fit the volunteer coach's limited playbook.
So that kid goes to the bench.
I mean, imagine being a kid in this scenario. Just put yourself in their shoes.
It's heartbreaking.
Your family finally saves up enough money to get you onto a local team. You show up to practice, you work hard, and then game day arrives. And you realize very quickly that the game is effectively rigged by the adults in charge.
Right.
You are sitting on the bench because of a volunteer hierarchy you have absolutely zero control over.
This creates a fascinating but deeply concerning loop of privilege. The system is basically designed to exploit unpaid parent volunteerism to keep costs manageable at the recreational level.
But the collateral damage of relying on untrained labor is that development opportunities are hoarded by the children of the volunteers.
Or the children of the affluent, yeah.
And as we move through this stack of sources, we hit a point where even if you miraculously solve the financial barrier,
Which is a big if.
a huge if, and even if you somehow navigate the volunteer coaching politics, there is a third barrier.
This one is entirely cultural.
And frankly, the data from the McKinsey Institute makes it the most alarming part of this entire deep dive.
It really does. The McKinsey Institute for Economic Mobility looked at the sociological landscape of youth sports, and they painted a deeply concerning picture regarding who actually stays in the game.
Yeah, what stood out to you in those numbers?
The attrition rates. Black and Latino children quit youth soccer in the United States at 3 times the rate of white children.
3 times the rate.
Yes.
And what's wild to me is that the data controls for income. So this isn't just about the $10,000 price tag we talked about earlier.
No, it's not just the money.
There is something else fundamentally pushing these specific demographics out of this sport. What is the mechanism behind that mass exodus?
This raises an important question, right? If cost isn't the only factor driving these kids away, what is? The survey results within these reports point to a massive crisis of belonging.
A longing.
Yeah. These Black and Latino kids are not exiting the sport because they lack skill or lose interest. They are explicitly reporting that they leave because they feel unwanted in those environments.
Unwanted, but how exactly does a youth sports environment project that to a 10-year-old? Like, we aren't talking about explicit cartoonish villains banning kids from the field.
No, it's much more subtle than that.
So how does the system mechanically make a child feel like an outsider?
It happens through logistical and cultural signaling.
Yeah.
Mechanically, just look at where elite soccer complexes are built in the United States.
Okay, where are they?
They are overwhelmingly located in affluent, predominantly white suburbs, and they often require car to access because they are miles away from public transit lines.
Right, so just getting to practice requires navigating spaces that structurally cater to a specific demographic.
Exactly. That geographic placement of the sport itself acts as a filter. That's step 1.
Okay, what's step 2?
Step 2 is leadership representation. When these kids finally arrive at these massive suburban complexes, they look at the club boards, the directors of coaching, and the referee pools.
And I'm guessing they don't see themselves.
Not at all. The McKinsey data reflects a staggering lack of minority representation in those leadership roles. A child looks around and sees absolutely no one in a position of authority who looks like them or understands their cultural background.
It's the unspoken message of the room.
And that unspoken message is reinforced by the culture of the clubs themselves.
You mean like the sideline culture?
Yeah, the way tournaments are run, the expectations around parent socialization on the sidelines, even the implicit biases in how different styles of play are refereed or disciplined. A Black or Latino kid playing in a predominantly white, affluent club often faces a constant barrage of microaggressions. Their style, their background, or their family's inability to participate in the expensive sideline culture is just subtly penalized.
It is a profound distinction to make. Being excluded by a price tag is a logistical reality of economics. But being excluded by a feeling of not being welcome,
It's entirely different.
showing up to a field ready to play and absorbing the structural message that you do not belong there, that requires an entirely different solution.
It really does.
You can subsidize a club fee, sure, but how do you fix a fundamentally exclusionary culture?
That requires a total systemic overhaul. It requires moving facilities, restructuring leadership boards, and actively dismantling the affluent suburban norms that have basically hijacked the sports identity in this country.
And based on the congressional hearings 6 months ago, there is very little institutional appetite to do any of that.
Unfortunately, no. The problem has a name. It's benched. The government knows it.
The institutions know it, but the kids are still sitting there.
Yeah, they are.
So what does this all mean for us right now, in the middle of this massive global party?
We need to look at the big picture.
Let's recap the mechanisms we've uncovered today. We are looking at a triad of systemic failures in American youth soccer. First, an exclusionary price architecture that relies on parents acting as angel investors, effectively walling off the sport for low-income families.
Right.
Second, a grassroots system starved of funding that relies on untrained volunteer coaches, which inadvertently creates a loop of privilege based on backyard dynamics.
That untrained labor really is a huge bottleneck.
And third, a profound lack of belonging driven by geographic and cultural signaling that pushes Black and Latino kids away from the game at 3 times the rate of their peers.
It is just a comprehensive failure of the grassroots system, and it's documented and acknowledged at the highest levels of our government.
So as you turn on your TV this month, as you watch the 2026 World Cup matches, as you see the flags flying and the crowds cheering in these beautiful American stadiums, I really want you to think about the kids in the shadows of those stadiums.
The ones who aren't on the field.
Think about the millions of children in the host nation who are sidelined by these invisible barriers of wealth, volunteer politics, and cultural exclusion.
I think I'll leave you with a final lingering question to ponder as you watch those games.
Yeah, let's hear it.
We've talked a lot today about a broken system. But if we look at the economics, the closed franchise models, and the suburban focus, what if this system isn't actually broken at all?
Wait, what do you mean?
What if it is functioning exactly as it was designed to function? To quietly filter children out based on their family's wealth, their parental influence, and their background.
That is a chilling thought.
If that is true, what happens to an entire generation of kids who learn before they even reach high school that society expects them to just sit on the bench?
It's a really heavy thought, but it's one we can't ignore while the whole world is watching us throw this party. Keep questioning the systems around you, even when the music is loud. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive. We'll catch you next time.